And we're live. What's going on, everyone? It's Live with Kenny, episode 48. And we're going to be speaking about the secular religion of the progressive left. As you may or may not know, the left has really been going app shit crazy, I guess you can say. That would be a perfect word for this. And I kind of want to, today's been on the news, Candace Owens and the right, always fighting, always drama on the right. Am I right? But I want to kind of focus on the left a little bit. And I want to highlight some things that I find very concerning about the concepts and the ideology that the left likes to push. So we're going to talk about a story, which was with Anna Kasparian and her freak out over crime in New York, and how essentially in this secular worship of ideas, there's these people that the left never want to cross. Criminals, people in the LGBTQ community, minorities. And these are the people that are held in high regard. They're put on a pedestal. And for some reason, nothing is ever their fault. So I want to go into this video a little bit of reacting to some of the takes that Anna Kasparian was pretty much freaking out. And how the left demands purity similar to a religion, right? Because you get many of these leftists that have a materialist view that, oh, everything, that's all there is. God doesn't exist because we made him up. And reasoning, to me, the truth stands on its own. Truth is, I don't believe this is all just random, like the world was created randomly. I honestly believe that we have a creator, and that creator set a certain rule set, a certain order into the world. For some reason, and this is where I get lost with the secular religion, is that it takes belief to think that someone is born a woman can be a man, when that's immaterially impossible. But many people on the progressive left, many of them atheists, believe this nonsense. They believe feelings. Yet they'll turn around, go to the Christian and say, oh, you believe in a fantasy view of some man in the sky. That's rich coming from someone who believes men can be women and women can be men. And this is my primary example of this religion, this religiosity that's taking over the left, is because the left doesn't really care about, I guess, morality. What they really worship is power. And end of the day, it's ingrained in our human nature to find meaning in our life. And in one ways, it seems like due to us becoming more atheistic, less religious, we're finding our beliefs in ideology now. And this ideology, this secular religion of the progressive left, has become a dogma. But I digress. Let's get into some of the reactions to Anna Kasparian and her crime take. And let's take a look as you see some of this cognitive dissonance that the left explains a lot.
Type of stuff. Dismembering corpses. I can't think of one single scenario where I'm like, hang on, guys, let's hear him out. I'm sure it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, it's insanity. Insanity. If you're still living in New York, what are you doing?
What are we doing, Jake? What are we doing? What are we doing? Someone tell me, what the F are we doing?
Yeah, look, no one signed up for this. I don't know how the hell any of these laws passed. I went to every progressive conference there was over the last 20 years. I never heard a single person saying, why don't we let the actual criminals go? Hey, if someone butchers someone and
Jake, that's because you haven't been paying attention. This is not a surprise to anybody who has been paying attention.
And this is also another religion of the left as well that I want to point out, is the dogma of the weak. In the left's religiosity and their religious-like thinking, they believe anyone who's poor, anyone who doesn't have power are inherently good. This is why they're all for open borders. This is why they're like, oh no, let the illegals come. We should process them. We should give them the world. Oh, they just come here to seek a better life. They assume the positive. They assume the good in these people without considering the possible bad that these people bring. And it seems to be because they have this underdogma where, oh my God, you're in such a downtrodden path. We won't hold you accountable. We'll have different stands for you. We'll put you a slap on the wrist. You can commit crimes all throughout the world. Oh, bond is discriminatory against poor people. But poor people commit more crimes than rich people because poor people have nothing to lose while rich people have something to lose. So they're incentivized not to commit crime. And the only consequence poor people actually respect is consequence, actually. So the idea that, oh, no cash bail should be allowed, you're only incentivizing poor people to commit more crimes. If you look at the average net worth of a criminal, it will be in the poverty level. You don't hear millionaires out here robbing, killing people because they have something to lose. Now, you can find exceptions, sure. But this idea that cash bail is somehow discriminatory against poor people. No. If you commit a crime, there should be some type of penalty and some type of incentive to not let you out again. And this is a story talking about the dismemberment of elderly people by this killer that got let out. The lady got let out. She aided and abetted. And I believe the next day she went out and looted or robbed some store. They put her in jail. No cash bail. She got right back out. Bro. And progressives want to sit here and pretend, oh no, we didn't really mean it like that. But progressives, what are you? You just progress, right? You keep moving forward, right? And this is the kind of religiosity that I'm noticing on the left, that the left don't necessarily care that their ideas are bad in implementation. When you test out a theory in reality, and reality continually show that your theory is wrong, you must accept that your theory is wrong. But for the progressive left, and this is why I say a lot of they treat their ideology like a religion, is that no matter what the evidence say, no matter what reality tells them, no matter what empirical proof you put in front of them, they'll deny and say, no, this is not real socialism. This is not what progressives actually meant. When we mean jail reform, this is not what we mean. But what you mean? All they're going to do is expand the definition of a crime. Oh, that's not a crime. And this is what you get now. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Like, there are actually activists out there who will try to rationalize what these people have done. Oh, it's just their socioeconomic conditions. They were hungry. They had no choice. They had a housing insecurity, systemic racism. We haven't seen photos of these people, especially if they're not white. Absolutely, there will be leftist activists coming out to defend them because it's never actually the criminal's fault. And if you don't get that by now, you're not paying attention.
And chops them up into little pieces. Let's do the kind of criminal justice reform where they would be able to walk out free.
Yeah, come at me right now and tell me I'm the bad guy, because I want these people who dismembered corpses and tried to conceal the evidence in prison. Good. Come at me and tell me I'm the bad guy. Come at me.
I don't look, guys.
Insane. You guys are insane. Anyone who thinks this is okay is insane. And everyone else in New York has to suffer the consequences of this with random bag checks.
And this is another religiosity point of view about this ideology, is that you reap what you sow. A progressive sees this, right? A lady who aligned herself with the progressive movement, the progressive left, she calls out, hey, this is insane. We need to stop. And then you got people of the same political side still trying to rationalize that this is an okay thing. And this is another point about my point about how the left has almost a religiosity with their ideology, is that they treat people as if they don't have free will. And this is a very Karl Marxist idea, that no one has free will. This is why, oh my God, it's poverty. Poverty is the reason why these people had to commit crime and steal from people. They were hungry. That's why they chopped up and gutted 2 corpses and try to hide it, clogging up pipelines. It's because they're poor. They had nothing to do. They were conditioned, programmed. Nothing's ever their fault. Everything's social engineering's fault. Because the secular religion of the left believes that people don't have free will. This is why racism is systematic. This is why math tests are racist. Because people don't have free will. This is this secular religion of the left. And because no one has free will, culture and race are essentially the same. If you show up late and I penalize you for showing up late, you're going to call me racist because black people tend to show up late compared to other groups of people. They can't help it, Kenny. They're black. As if you're programmed to be late. As if you're programmed to not be able to do math well because you're black. It all sees back into this racist idea of genetic determinism. You can't tell me one gene that determines IQ, but for some reason you want to correlate race with IQ level, when there's more substantive correlations with IQ and education. If you take a kid and you move him from one location to the other, his IQ will change because of what? The quality of information he's receiving. But hey, this is the left for you.
At the subway by National Guard.
No, Anna, that is a great point. Sis is just on fire in this segment because simultaneously, while this is happening in New York, you guys may have seen that Hochul, the governor, she deployed the National Guard to the subway because of all the crime that's been happening on the subway too.
Yeah, but God forbid Trump do that. God forbid Trump do that, right? And this is the ideological purity of the religion. And anyone who speaks out against like common sense stuff, anyone who speaks out against this, they're ready to talk. So the reason why I picked this video specifically is Laura Chan is going to point out how leftists, like more people who are further left than Anna Kasparian and Shank, are going to use this very same clip and make excuses, rationalizations for them. And this is the problem with secularism, because since secularism is based kind of on moral relativism, you can rationalize any behavior. You can literally try to make any justification for any behavior. And the problem that religion kind of solves in human nature is that it tethers you to something objective, something outside of yourself. Did you sin? Yes, I sinned. No matter how much you try to rationalize, oh, I was hungry, you still stole from somebody. That's a sin. Religion put this idea of a moral objectivity, a morality that exists outside of your rationalization. This is why I say the religions in some cases is a check against human nature, because human nature have a tendency to do something like this. Let's take a look at the response to Shanks by the left.
No, what happened wasn't that bad. And I do want to once more shout out Sean, because he is, again,
was on this issue. I might add up. You might as the insanity is you sound like Sean Hannity when you talk about this issue. If we want to do a little bit of antiquated humor here, completely ridiculous. The fact of the matter is that there's so one, he lives in California, right? So he doesn't know anything about what he's talking about, absolutely at all, about New York City. But let's even give him the charitable, interpretation. Let's talk about Los Angeles crime, and let's talk about crime rates in California. Hey, Cenk, do you know how fucking expensive it is to pay rent in California?
So you get the idea? So because it's expensive, like in a day, you can't choose what happens to you. I grew up poor. I don't have a criminal record. Why is that? I made a different choice. See, it's this idea that like free will isn't real. These people are going to sit here and try to make justification. Oh, it's very expensive in New York. It's expensive to afford groceries. So you're making rationalizations of why you have to steal, instead of making a different decision. Hold on, let me work. Because at the end of the day, when you steal from someone else. Someone else had to work their butt off to get the store to have the groceries in the store, and you just go in there and you steal from their labor? How's that any different from a farmer who finished tethering his land, crafting it, taking care of his garden, and it's finally producing fruit, and you come around and you steal it because you were hungry? But instead of going out and try to do something to get it as a mutual exchange, you just went on and take it. This is why I say many people who identify themselves as socialists, they're merely just looters, in my view anyway. They're looters. And it's just baffling to me. Now, I'm moving on from Laura Chan, but that's a prime example of like some of the issues that I have with the left, that they treat their ideology like a religion. And if you speak out against it, they treat it as blasphemy. But then they're going to sit here and say, oh, the science, we trust the science. You trust the science, but then look at the biological reality of human nature, that there's only two genders. But you want to spend money, waste money, trying to challenge the idea that there's only two genders. How the left is not acting like a religious organization, I don't know. And the college system is essentially their church. 12-to-1 ratio, liberal to conservative. And I want to highlight this video Tucker Carlson did. He talks about globalism. He talks about the ills of our society. And essentially, you can make this the standing point of the religious left. I think, sorry, not the religious left, the secular religion of the left. Let's take a look.
Because what they're promising is death. What they're promising you is no grandchildren, which is literally death. Your line dies. And I don't think there's a chapter in the Old Testament where children aren't described as synonymous with wealth. You want to know if you're prosperous? You want to know if you're in God's favor? How many kids do you have? How many grandkids do you have? How are they doing? That's the oldest and most basic, and will always be the most basic measure of prosperity. How are your descendants? And what they're promising you, every person in this room, is no descendants. No descendants. It's really that simple. You can reduce all these debates about climate or crime, all the weird sex stuff. I'm not even going to dignify it with a name. I'm just going to call it that weird sex stuff. But if they're promising you the opportunity to castrate your children, what are they really promising you? No grandchildren. The end of your line. And Solomon and David would like instantly recognize that as an act of total war against you and your people. Period. Because that's what that is. So they can't say any of this out loud because there's not one person who wants that product, extinction. There's not one person who wants that. And so if they're going to take and maintain power, they need to get it another way, a non-democratic way. And the way they're going to do that, and the way they are doing it as we speak, is by changing the population of the country.
Yeah. Secular religion of the left, right? They teach you, oh, you're bad, but oh no, these migrants coming outside of your border, they're good. It's a very anti-American view, honestly. All right? They sell like the victim is has the greatest morality. Whoever's the weakest person is the most good. And you see it in DEI, and this is another concept of religiosity that I'm going to point out to about the left, is that they're not really grounded in any type of reality. Another part of the secular religion of the left is to be anti-American, hate America. This is why they want to trans your kids. This is why they're happy when Oprah praises LGBT advocacy groups for promoting Jazz Jennings, sex change for trans kids. Because they know your kids are the most vulnerable people in our society, the most impressionable people in our society. There's studies that show this. There's studies that verify this, that kids under 7 years old operate subconsciously. They're like a living tape recorder. And whatever you expose them to, it gets downloaded into their subconscious. This is why they're after the kids. It's a form of conditioning. It's a form of mental conditioning. They're trying to condition your kids, prime your kids for these ideas. Yo, this is subversion. This is subversion. Right? The left, like I already stated, they're very anti-American. Look at this clip. This is a clip of someone who's protesting in, I believe it was for Gaza, and hear what this guy has to say. And this is another part of the secular religion of the progressive left, is to be anti-American, pro destruction of your own country, because they believe you colonized the land. When essentially, what you can make the same argument that this is what they're doing. But I digress. Let's get into the video.
You're over here appropriating a space for your own personality.
I'm a journalist.
You're not a journalist.
How do you decide who's a journalist?
I mean, considering I was fired as a journalist, you're no journalist.
Literally, would you rather be itchy or sick your whole life?
You're not doing this for like what the actual conversation is, which is getting rid of this country.
Getting rid of this country?
Getting rid of America, getting rid of the West. This is what this is for.
You want to get rid of America?
Yes, everyone here understands that at some level we need to get rid of America completely.
What should we do?
Decolonization, land back.
Where should we go, though?
In our communities. We need to go leave the capitals, leave the central capitals of commerce, of capital itself. You're over here appropriating a space for your own
So
personality.
as you can see,
You're not a journalist.
they just want destruction. And this is my one of my number one issues with socialists, is that they just want to be they just want to be on top of ashes. Destroy it, because socialists don't build anything. Socialists come in after capitalism built everything, after capitalism lifted people out of poverty. Then they come out, I take it from here, capitalist. A socialist is someone who only knows how to destroy. They don't know how to build anything for themselves. As you can see from the circular firing squad that they're doing right now with their secular religion, how they're destroying and conspiring over this. Oh my God, you guys sound like Sean Kennedy. You guys sound like right-wing pundits. You're fear-mongering about this crime issue because they're aware how dangerous this idea is. They're seeing the results of the ideology. They're seeing the results of the theory that cash bail actually helps people. It makes a better society. It doesn't. It incentivizes a behavior where criminals or people who would commit criminal acts are emboldened and incentivized to commit crimes. That's what cash bail has revealed itself to be. And it's baffling that there's people out there that's willing to defend this stuff. So I'm going to go into another point, and this is Vivek. I haven't spoken about Vivek in a long time. He's going to talk about the 3 secular religions of the left, right? Which is wokeness, the climate cult, transgenderism. And this is where I got the idea for the video. And they have the reason why I call it is their own rituals and sacrifices are involved. Oh, I consider abortion a ritual and sacrifice to the secular religion of the left. This is why I laugh when pro-choice people pro-abortion people try to defend abortion from a moral point of view. Because I'm like, if I'm looking at it morally, you can't really win that moral argument. Well, to many people on the left, and this is something they teach you on the left, and I think Marxism really fits the bill here, is that they teach you that morality is relative, and the only thing that matters is power itself. And he who has the power makes the rules. And that's what the left really believes in. They don't care if they come across as liars. They don't care if they contradict themselves from one topic to the other. All they care about is, hey, we're pushing our agenda. Is this going to help me win this argument? Is this going to help me position the agenda properly? I'll do it. So in reality, the core tenets of the secular religion of the progressive left is actually power. This is why they're very Machiavellian in their tactics. But I digress. Let's hear what Vivek has to say as he discussed the three religions of the left. Let's take a look.
Spoken about how America as a society is kind of has an identity crisis as well right now. And one of the things you pointed to is the rise of secular religions.
Yes.
To a layman, to an idiot, can you describe what exactly is a secular religion? How does it affect our society?
Yes, so secular religions, and we can name ones that fit this description.
Please.
Wokeism, transgenderism. I put climate ideology, what I call climatism, in this category. I put COVIDism in this category. It became a kind of religion. Is a religion without a God. So it has a hierarchical set of comprehensive beliefs that guide how you're supposed to behave in pursuit of a kind of salvation, but without an actual God to provide that salvation.
Absolute truth.
Without that absolute truth governing.
Okay.
Right? And so in the woke ideology, there's a comprehensive worldview. It says that you're in my relationship with each other, that we're in a relationship.
And yeah, I agree with that sentiment because in reality, what they actually are submitted to is actually power. What's going to push power? That's who wins. Right? There's this claim that Marxists and communists, they always kill themselves, destroy themselves, they always eat their own. It's because it's relative. They're like, no, I want the power. I want the power. That's why socialism is such a scam. That's why socialism is slavery. Because you position it as if, oh no, you don't have to do anything. I'll take care of you from cradle to grave. But I benefit from your labor. You can do nothing for yourself. You exist for me to benefit off your labor. But in return, I take care of you from cradle to grave. It doesn't matter how I treat you. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't matter if you think it's unfair, the working conditions I'm putting you through, because I'm responsible for you. I'm taking care of your health care. I'm taking care of your housing. I can have your wife if I want to or not. Because essentially with communism, communists don't believe in property rights. And body autonomy is property rights. If you see all these Christian socialists and you hear a lot about stories about their communal living and how they share each other's wives and it's so antithesis of collectivism. This secular religion that we're doing, that the left believes in, it's barely based on power relations. And whoever's at the top of that hierarchy, they get to decide where the whole ship goes. And this is how the left kind of organize themselves in a lot of these movements. And this is why it's very cutthroat, traitorous position. Because they're always looking for a way to angle themselves higher up that totem pole. Because they want to decide how society goes. They want to benefit from all the production of society, regardless of how it's affecting people below them. Because every socialist, all they really care about, they don't care about producing more value than they take. They care about extracting all the value out of the population for their own benefit. They want to rule the society like kings used to do in the old days. Except instead of being kings and nobles, it's presidents and politicians. We just changed the definition. We just changed the look. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Relationship with each other. It's guided not by the salt and the salt water that God resides in each of us. It's a different kind of relationship. It's a relationship of hierarchy, which says that one of us is an oppressor and one of us is oppressed, based on a category of math of intersectionality that creates this world ordering of hierarchies based on power relationships. And the Marxist old worldview, and Marxism was very hostile to traditional religion because it had a religious quality of its own. The Marxist worldview, that power relationship was based on money. In the new wokeism worldview, it's based on genetic immutable characteristics, to say that the world is governed by not by the invisible presence of God within each of us, but by invisible struggles of power relationships between each of us. And then once you understand that power relationship, that guides what you are or aren't supposed to do, the moral thing to do if you are in a position of being in the oppressor position is to make the sacrifice, the equivalent of like an old Catholic tradition of wearing a hair shirt or whatever. You actually have to make a physical sacrifice unto yourself to be able to stand back to let the person who's lower on that rung of hierarchy to have the same equal opportunity that you do. In the climate religion, to say that we are facing an existential risk, that you personally have to make a sacrifice to advance the betterment of the whole. Again, the equivalent of wearing a hair shirt.
So it's almost in a way a slight differential of altruism. Altruism, this idea is that you sacrifice for a greater good, or you sacrifice yourself in the expense of other people, for other people, right? You offer is I guess the illustration of altruism is that if you see hungry people, you give and you're hungry, instead of take care of yourself and finding a way for both of you to live, you like, here, eat me alive so you can live, right? Essentially, you do everything, even if it's detrimental to yourself, your family, your community, your people. Doesn't it sound like the open border to anybody yet? That you must do that, because they are the greater good. And this is the underdogma that I'm talking about from the secular religion of the progressive left, is that the weak is morally good, and the people who are oppressors, the people who are privileged, because compared to the rest of the world, right, instead of a few countries, if you're the most privileged person, it's up to you to sacrifice in the benefit of the least privileged person. This is how they see the illegal immigrants. Us as Americans, we're privileged. And because we're privileged, we should sacrifice our well-being. We should sacrifice our tax dollars to fund illegal migrants to come over the border, take care of them, give them free healthcare, put them in luxury hotels, because that's our job as the privileged class. That's according to the calculus of the secular religion of the progressive left. It's altruism in disguise. But the problem is, and this is my problem with a lot of the socialists, is that many of them sell this idea of, oh my God, this perfect world, we're just altruistic, we're just trying to save, we're just trying to make people's better life. At every attempt that every self-proclaimed socialist did to implement socialism, it just ended up them acting like a dictator, acting like a king, benefiting from the production of its people, treating its people like slaves. This is why I made that video, why socialism is slavery. I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Every religion, in many ways, has this culture of sacrifice before God, before one true God. I mean, even in the Hindu tradition, there's various examples of it. You'd go to India, you would see all kinds of strange ritual sacrifices where people will walk on hot coals or fire. You've seen it in the Catholic tradition.
Have you done that?
No.
Okay.
I'm not a big.
No, I've heard of it, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm not a big. That's not my brand.
Right.
I'm just like, most Catholics don't wear a hair shirt. Right, or flog themselves.
And I don't have horns, but other Orthodox. No, okay.
So what would be the best example of like a sacrificial tradition in the Jewish tradition?
Well, we did originally, like in the times of the temple, we were very sacrifice based.
Right. What would be a good example? Like animals mostly. Animals.
Yeah, it was mostly like
never,
rams.
never human beings. That's for
sure. I guess the most iconic example would be like on.
Well, I will say. Now, for the left, it's abortion. That's why they praise, shout your abortions. That's essentially human sacrifice, right? Because the left has this idea with abortion that for some reason a child will hold you back. When I don't think that's necessarily true at all, right? Some women who, when they do abortions, they claim economic hardship, or I can't give this kid a good life, so therefore he must die. Like, no, look at our history as human beings. We still had kids even during the worst time in human histories. We still was having kids. But for some reason in first world, we have all these great problems that we're dealing with that we can't do anything about it. And I just find it very, very weird from the progressive left. And their sacrifice, I already outlined it before. They believe the most privileged class should sacrifice in the benefit of the less privileged class. The less privileged class could essentially take take advantage, destroy the whole country. Doesn't matter. It's like self-flagellating, right? This is why they push white guilt on white people so much. This is why white liberals, woke white liberals specifically, have such a negative bias against their own group of people, because they've been conditioned and taught through the education system, college, that white people are oppressive. White people are inherently racist. Black people have a handicap against them because of their skin color. And if you're a black person that I espouse, no, I don't have no handicap. My skin color isn't a handicap. I'm just as capable as anybody else. They'll call you, oh, you're ignoring racism. because you don't see race first. What a racist idea. But we're going to go to the source. Now I'm already halfway through my stream. But we're going to talk about DEI because I think this is one of the main tenets of the religion of the progressive left. So Elon Musk, he went viral with was like Dom Lemon about DEI in medicine and how Don Lemon tried to deny that this is not happening. No one's lowering standards for minority groups, underrepresented groups. Only just the Nashville Police Department changing physical fitness requirements to add to recruit more female officers. Right, that's just one example. And as you can see, this is my problem with Don Lemon types and liberals. They never cover these stories, right? Across 11 sources, only people on the right covered this specific story. That means if you're a left-wing person, maybe if you're a centrist, a left-leaning centrist, you will not be aware that they're changing physical fitness requirements in the Nashville Police Department to recruit more female officers. And then you're going to come in like Don Lemon and said, no one is doing this. No one is doing this.
If we lower the standards for what it takes to become a doctor.
You're saying if we lower the standards,
yes.
But do you believe people are dying because the standards are being lowered?
Yes.
I don't
or have
think
been
that
lowered.
is yes an issue, but it could become an issue.
Okay. But the actual evidence in history shows the exact opposite. If you look at how minorities are treated by the medical system, most doctors now are white. And there are lots of mistakes in medicine. So you're saying that my doctor.
So this is my problem with this whole DEI speech, and this is another religiosity too to like some of the ideology that the left just hold on like this to. Is that this is the belief that black and white are distinct, different people? No, we're not. The only thing that's different is I have more pigmentation than a white person. That's it. But our biology is the same. The only thing that separates us is our culture. How we've been conditioned, how we've been socialized, how we've been taught to value and prioritize. That's the only thing that's different, distinct between white people and black people. And maybe some certain genetic prepositions, right? But I think that's due to conditioning, not necessarily due to genetics. And the idea that, we need more black doctors because white patients or white doctors are less taught. I don't know what the rationale is, but the idea that white doctors are not adequate for black people don't feel safe. And like DEI, when you push in DEI, I'm going to assume that you're putting race before merit. Based on the merits, you couldn't hire enough female officers, so what you did, you changed the standards, you lowered the standards because you value what? An identity over the merit. The person couldn't pass. You knew the thing was filtering out a large percentage of white females, and now you lower the standards so that way you can get them in, or you change the standards to allow more white females to be in law enforcement. You don't think crime is going to increase? You don't think this is going to embolden criminals to commit more crime? Like if an all-woman police force was responsible for a whole precinct, I guarantee you crime will increase. Washington's Supreme Court rules prospective lawyers no longer have to pass racist bar exam, claiming it blocks marginalized groups from practicing law. This is the religion of the left right here. That marginalized groups, we create a preference around them. We stroke their ego. We say, you earned this position, not because you're black. We're lowering the standards. Lowering the standards. You're just as qualified as a white lawyer, even though a white lawyer was able to pass the bar exam, but they made special considerations. They removed the bar exam to allow more black people to pass it because it's racist. What made it racist? Black people just happened to fail the test more. Make it make sense. Black people already don't come from a strong academic background. They don't display strong academic skills to begin with. But instead, what you do, affirmative action so they can get, admitted to colleges at a disproportional rate. 13% of the population, but you overrepresent. I'm lying. They're not overrepresented, but you want to force representation. Then these kids go in. A large percentage of them drop out of school because they weren't supposed to be there in the first place. And the ones that barely made it through college, then they go out and take this bar exam and they fail. Because what? The foundation was already off. If you don't have a strong foundation, it's hard to go up in the higher levels. Let's take sports as an example. Black people overrepresented in the NBA. 78% of the NBA is black. They overrepresented in the NBA. Why is that? No one's going to say it's because of black privilege. No one's going to say that institutional racism is filtering out white players from competing in the NBA. No one's going to say that. What are they going to say? The black community just happens to produce the best athletes. And just because white players aren't as competitive as black players doesn't mean that there's a racial bias in the drafting process for the NBA. It's based on merit. No black person, no DEI person, none of these race hustlers will ever argue against me on that point. But now that I bring it to an avenue where black people aren't as successful, aren't as competitive, oh, it's racism. Either it applies in both cases or it applies in none of the cases. And my argument is they apply in none of the cases. I already mentioned it. Marginalized groups do not come from a strong academic background. There's a variety of factors that I can go to. One angle I can go to is the rate of single motherhood. Shows that kids who spend time with their parents doing homework, they do better in school. Look at the Asians. Asian students do more homework, almost 2 hours a day more homework than other groups of people. Black people do the least amount of homework, schoolwork. So that means their rate of improvement is slower than Asian students. So then when you put them in a competitive environment like school, fighting for admissions to Ivy League colleges, this is why Asians are overrepresented in university. And this is why affirmative action discriminates against Asians and white students. Affirmative action is racism under new management. But the secular religion of the left justifies this racism, this discrimination, as no, we have to cater ourselves to organized groups, marginalized groups, and help them come up, help them get equal outcomes, even though they're not displaying equal behaviors. That's my problem. You're incentivizing laziness. You're incentivizing entitlement. This is what equal outcome produces. This is how socialists create grievance in a culture, resentment in a culture, by pointing and look, black people don't have as much wealth as white people. On average, older Americans make more money than younger Americans. White people have an average higher age, older age than the black community. The black community on average has younger people in its population. Couldn't that explain the wealth gap? No. The secular religion of the left, they don't look for causes of problem and then try to fix it. They look for something to blame. And anything that looks even plausible that could be the problem, they just run with it. Criminal justice reform because black men are over incarcerated. But they don't say black men commit crime. They don't like to put personal responsibility on the marginal group. When it comes to the marginal groups don't have free will. They had to do what they had to do, Kenny. They were born in poverty. But if a white person do the same behavior, oh no, he meant to do that. He was malicious. We got to hold him to the full extent of the law. This is some craziness here. But I digress. Here's the final, not the final, actually it is the final one. Here is the video, which is the thumbnail of this video, where we're going to go into Vince. His name is Vince Ellison. He exposes the truth behind diversity, equity, inclusion, and also abortion, these are something that the left hold like a religion on their side, right? This is their sacrificial lamb. This is how they self-flunge themselves. This is how they denounce their white privilege, right? Because black power seems to be correlated with white guilt. And I don't believe that. I think black power has to be independent of any special consideration from other groups of people. I think black power has to stand on its own. And if black people can't stand on its own, that means black people really don't have any power in this society. That's just my thoughts. Let me hear yours in the comment section if you disagree or agree with me. Let's get into the video.
Let's give a warm Hawkeye welcome to Vince Everett Ellison.
Hello! I am so happy to be here with you tonight. I heard y'all been kind of looking for me, right? Well, I'm here. And I was around your beautiful city today, and I walked around it, and it's just beautiful, and I think I brought the heat with me. It's beautiful here. You know, our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, he was a country lawyer. He's talking to the jury, and he asked him a question. He said, if you had a dog, and you counted his tail as a leg, how many legs would the dog have? The jury said, 5. He said, no. Still be 4, because the tail is still a tail.
Yep. perception isn't reality. And I think that's something the left takes very to heart. Because to me, the left don't care about what's true or what's not true. All the left care about is persuasion and convincing. Can I convince a large swath of people that this is true? Can I get a large swath of people to think this way, regardless if it's true or not? Because it helps what? My ends. And this is what I'm saying. The left has a very strong imagination. They live in theoretical knowledge. It could be, it's possible. But then when you ask them, hey, let's put these theories to the test, they don't want to. This is why a lot of the left focus on academia. This is why a lot of the left live in academia, college, tenure, right? Because they're kind of protected from actually having to test the mantle of their ideas. This is why they don't like debate. This is why they don't like discussions. At least the progressive lefts, they don't like discussions. Liberals are still having it, right? You suffer more from imagination than from reality. Doesn't matter if you imagine a tail as a fifth leg, it's still a tail. That's the reality of the tail. The truth is not what you want it to be, it just is. And this is something that I think the left has lost because they've been so sold in moral relativism. They think everything is relative. They don't think there's no such thing as objective truth. And this is how a lot of them rationalize the cognitive dissonance that they have on various issues. Why one side believes something else than the other, because they believe, oh, that's their rationalization for it. Here's my rationalization for it. My rationalization is just as equal as that person's rationalization. And this is why they always come across contrarian when they debate somebody that has counter evidence to what they're stating in reality. This is how they psych themselves up or ignore evidence that's right in front of their face. Hey, look, your ideas don't work. Socialism has failed everywhere it's been attempted. No. That wasn't real socialism. It's craziness. It's crazy how these people can psych themselves out and completely deny reality because reality didn't confirm what they thought it should have. Reality didn't conform to their theory of how it should go. Therefore, they ignore reality, or they say, "Oh no, it was wrong with the person implementing it." They find some other reason for why the idea failed instead of realizing, "Hey, your idea is not a good idea because it failed in reality." This is what happens when you remove objective truth from a discussion, from an ideology. This is why empirical evidence need to come back. This is why we need to be more empiricist in our analysis of ideas, policies. This is why the left don't like history. This is why the left destroys history. That's why the left likes to destroy statues, because they don't want you to be reminded of the past. Because if you learn from the past, it'll be hard to repeat it in the future. And they know it's going to come with some skepticism. If you say, "Oh, look at how many people died in the hands of socialism. Look at the poverty rates in socialism. Look at the pollution that socialism caused with ineffective manufacturing plants and processes. Look how they don't take care of the environment because no one cares for taking care of a property because no one owned the property." You see what happened when people do the public housing? The perfect illustration that socialism don't really work is look at something that's publicly owned and look at something that's privately owned. Usually, or I will say 90% of the time, the privately owned stuff is better taken care of, better maintained than something that's publicly owned. Why? Because there's stewardship. There's some type of responsibility to it. Ownership brings responsibility. And what comes with responsibility comes authority. And people will feel more inclined, more incentivized to maintain what they have that they believe is theirs. You'll take care of your house better than you'll take care of Section 8 housing. All you have to do is look at it in reality. Section 8, I grew up in the hood. Section 8 was a perfect example of why socialism don't work. How the kids and the parents and the mom, they treated the Section 8 house. They treated it like crap. It smelled, they piss, stuff breaking on it. They don't fix it. They don't care to fix it. House is dirty. They don't maintain it at all. But I bet you if you put the same person and they had to pay for all the repairs, they had to pay all the maintenance, if they had to pay the mortgage every month at full capacity, they had to pay 100% of the mortgage. They'll take better care of the property than if the government came in and say, "Hey, we're subsidizing 89% of your mortgage, your rent bill. All you have to do is pay $500 for a $2,000 a month house." They'll take better care of it because most of it's their responsibility. And this is the problem with government subsidies. This is the problem with entitlement programs, is that incentivizes people to be almost passive in their life in the way they maintain their property, they maintain their stuff, cruise control. It incentivizes laziness. It sedates people mentally. It makes people comfortable in poverty because they know, oh, if I want more, that means I have to work harder. But I like I'll just cruise. I'll just live comfortably. That's why a single mom gets scared when she gets a raise at her job, and the Section 8 people and welfare people say, hey, you're making too much money. We won't have to get off your benefits. But if you quit or you go part-time, or you can still stay, because that's the point. They want you to stay. They want you to be a slave to the system. Socialism is slavery. I'm going to keep hammering that point because they want you docile. They want you sedated mentally. They don't want you intellectually curious about these ideas. They don't want you going around doing your own research. New York Times, Slate Magazine, Slate News, Slate.com, I forgot the name, telling you that if you do your own research, you're prone to misinformation. And they like to smear and label things that goes counter to their narrative as misinformation because they don't have any information to really counter the claims, counter the results in reality of their bad ideas. All they want to do, all socialists want to do, is they want to run society at the expense of everyone else. Socialists are looters. They loot from the poor. They loot from the rich. They use the poor as a shield, as an excuse to take from the rich. But unlike Robin Hood, they don't give it to the rich. They keep it for themselves and they give the rich scraps. That's the true nature of a socialist. And I don't care any kind of virtue signaling they're going to try to give in the comment section. That's the truth. Because just because you're weak and you don't have any power doesn't make you good. It makes you someone who just don't have power. And when those people tend to have power, right? Just like the stories in school, when the nerdy short kid get power, he's the biggest tyrants. Some of the worst tyrants in our history were short people. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not making that correlation that short people are inherently evil. I'm just making that as an example of just because you're weak, right? Because in stature, you're weak. But if you got power, you tend to abuse it. That's the argument I'm trying to make. That just because you're an underdog, just because you're a marginalized group, doesn't mean that you're somehow inherently better than a dominant group. You're the same creature. You're the same species. You're both human. And what's consistent with one is also consistent with you. I digress. I went on a long tangent there, but let's get back into the video.
Because you call it a leg doesn't make it a leg. It is still a tail. This is kind of what we're talking about here tonight. Just because you call something something doesn't mean that that's what it is. We've gone into a level of abject insanity here in America, and it's got to be dealt with. Man, I was walking through the city today, just enjoying the weather and enjoying the people, and I saw this mural on the side of the parking garage. It caught my attention. And it said, weaponize your privilege to save black bodies. And then it got a black man on it, looked like he dead. And I was seeing some of the students, and I was saying, hey, what is that about? And a lot of them didn't know. And then one young lady said, I think it came from the Black Lives Matter protests and things that were going on here. And I said, weaponize your privilege. So who are they talking to? And she said, well, I think they're talking to white people. And I said, they're saying they have some type of privilege over me to save black bodies? I mean, what are they saying?
And this is what I'm talking about, how college has become the ideological church of the left, is that they preach this idea that because you're a dominant group, or because you're a white person, right? They base the distinction based on class. They tell you, oh, because you're black, you're inferior. You're not able to take care of yourself. You're not able to rise yourself out of your situation. You're helpless because of your skin color. This is the ideology of the left. That marginal groups are less than. Marginal groups are helpless. Isn't that racist? That as a black person, you can't take yourself out of your own out of your negative situations. I grew up in a single parent household. I grew up in Little Haiti in South Florida. Like, I grew up around there. And I'm in a distinctly better place than my mom. In one generation, I turned it all around for my family, technically, from an economic standpoint. But I came with hard work because I believe I could. A man who believes he can and a man who believes he can't are both usually right. And the left is teaching marginalized people, people who happen to fit in the intersectional hierarchy, that they're helpless, that they need to group together, that they can't change anything by themselves, but they can as part of a collective. This is the ideas that they sold to many Americans. This is the religion of the left. Helplessness. Because of your identity, you have power or no power. You have a handicap or you have an advantage. You don't have an advantage if you come from a 2-parent household, but you're black. That's it. You're done. That's not reality. Race is only one factor, and race is not even much of a factor. I'll say your location determines more about your outcome than your race. If you grew up in the wealthy, if you grew up in a rich, all black area, you have as much privilege as a white person growing up in an all white area. All the difference is the amount of money. But that's calling for equal outcome. And the only way you can equalize outcome is if you make everyone miserable and let the socialists benefit off of the excess labor. That's it. Like some king, oh, you all are poor, I made society equal, and then the socialist is living high and mighty like some king in a kingdom. This is the problem with socialists. They don't want people to be self-determined. They don't believe in human capital. They believe in political capital. That's their religion. That's why they make everything political. They made science political. They made justice political. They made gender political now. And then they're going to pretend, oh, the right are so divisive. No, you're divisive. Because you can't come to reason. You don't know how to compromise. All you know how to do is stub your feet and be like, no, expand the government. No, government do this. No, government do that. But they don't notice that they're giving up a large swath of control for that stuff. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
And it dawned on me. I said, the left has a God complex. Black people think that they're inferior, and white liberals think that they're God. And black people are praying to white liberals to save their lives. Weaponize your privilege to save black bodies. It reminds me of an outtake from The Godfather, which he left it in the movie, Francis Ford Coppola, but it's an outtake. Vito Corleone is going to see his concierge, Jinko. He's dying. And he brings all of his sons. Jinko's not going to make it through the night. And Jinko's afraid. He's scared to death. He's lying there and he sees Vito come in with his sons. And he says, Godfather, save me from death. When death comes in the room, make some deals. He's seen Vito do all these great things his whole life, right? And he thought the Vito was like supernatural. He said, make a deal with death. Pull some strings, make death go away. And Vito looked at his old friend, seeing how afraid he was, and he looked at him and said, Jinko, I have no such power. Do not fear death. And Jinko said, well, then just stay with me. The left would tell the black community that we have that power.
This is the problem with a lot of the progressives. They think that the state have godlike powers that they can change everyone's situation, right? Like the reason why I think I'm a conservative also is that I believe and I know and I recognize that the government has limited power. The government is not all powerful. The government can't make the rich richer. I mean, maybe they can in a way, but at the expense of the poor. Eventually, it's all going to come collapsing down. We're all interconnected. We're all interdependent on each other. And to marginalize one group is to come at a great cost to the other. If you tax the rich and you take all their wealth and you steal all their wealth and they flee the country, the poor people who did not create the wealth won't know how to maintain the wealth, and they'll put the country in debt and destroy the country. And then the country's like, oh, we don't know how to run Amazon because you never built Amazon. But you stole it because, oh, Bezos is so greedy. He's hoarding all the money to himself. Yeah, the money he generated. The money that everyone willingly gave him because they value Amazon Prime more than their dollars. And enough people bought the Amazon product that made him a billionaire. And you saying that he's greedy. Imagine that. Imagine thinking that. Imagine the straight A student making all A's, passing every test. And then the 80% of the classroom is jealous of his grades and they say, teacher, we want you to redistribute his grades to all of us. And the teacher says, yeah, sure. And he does it. What happens to the smart kid? The smart kid ain't gonna want to work anymore. He's gonna do the bare minimum. Because he's gonna say, what's the point? What's this point studying at night to get the good grades that I got? What's the point of doing the extra hours in the curriculum, getting ahead of the class, studying, working hard, doing assignments? What's the point if I don't benefit at all from my own labor? You effectively, the 80% of the class effectively made the 20% of the class that had good grades slaves to them. Socialism is slavery. But the secular religion of the progressive left will say, no, this is a good thing because the most privileged, the most capable have a responsibility to sacrifice themselves for the betterment of the class. While the 80% of the class were here picking their nose, playing, texting on their game because they know, hey, 20%, y'all work hard for us. And they're sitting back taking advantage of them. And that's the incentive structure that the left do not want to recognize. That we're human at the end of the day. We're not, because the left have this naive idea that people are like blank slates or naturally good. And the most realistic position I say is that we're decent people. There's no such thing as a good person. There's a decent person. And a good person is a decent person that decides to do good things. It's a choice. Just like it's a choice to do evil, it's a choice to do good. That's why conservatives are so harsh on criminals. Because we believe that every human has an ability to do something good, but they choose to do something wrong or choose something evil because it was more convenient for them. Morality, virtue, principles, it teaches you not to do the convenient thing because the most convenient thing is usually the most evil thing. Oh, I like a girl. Instead of, hey, let me build a rapport with her. Let me build a relationship with her. So and see if highlight my good qualities and hopefully she falls in love with me. That's a harder path. The easy path is, I'll just take what I want from her. Convenient, right? What's more convenient? A guy taking a girl out to dinner, talking to her in a date, or just go in there, grab her, and have his way with her. What's easier? Morality teaches you not to do that. Don't do what's expedient for yourself because you get to benefit it at the expense of the woman. It's not going to be good for you or her in the long run. Because when her family finds out, you're a dead man. You're a dead man walking. Right? Principles teach you to delay gratification for even better outcome. But we have lost that in our society. Our society is so self-centered. It's because of the secular religion of the progressive left. Now we allow them to dominate media, digital media, Hollywood. They push this ideal of self-entitlement, almost a very narcissistic, self-centered view. And everyone's rushing to get a benefit from the system. Everyone's trying to pretend to be a victim. Everyone's pretending that a man could be a woman because they see what happens to people who don't say that. They're scared to lose their jobs because saying the truth would be a hindrance on them. This is why we lack courage today. White guilt is black power. Without white guilt, black people have no power in our society. That's the truth. And the white liberals are the one that's given to them because the white liberals have this racist idea that because of the color of their skin, they have some superpower to stop death. Socialists, arrogant fools. Because because this is the problem with socialists. They don't seem to recognize this. If we were all angels, there will be no need for government. But we're not all angels. That's why we have government. Government is there to enforce the rules, to regulate society to a degree, to prevent you from stealing from the rich kid, to prevent you from stealing from the kid with good grades and making him a slave for your own benefit. That's why government exists. Government doesn't exist to redistribute wealth, balance the scale. Oh, let me do this for you because it's not fair. It's not a fair system. Redistribution of wealth is not a fair system because the top 20% of people produce most of the wealth in the society. That's the truth. All you have to do is look at the taxes. Who pays more taxes into the system? Rich people do. The top 20% of taxpayers produce almost 70% of the tax revenue. That means if I take all the top 20 taxpayers, you lose 66% of your tax revenue. But you want to redistribute wealth? How is that fair? So when they had the wealth, you taxed them. They were responsible for 66% of your tax revenue. And now that you redistributed the wealth, they lost all that. They're like, there's no incentive to try anymore. This is the problem with the religiously of the left. This is the religion of the left. That the dominant class must sacrifice for the good of the underprivileged class at the expense of itself. And by doing so, you create mediocrity. You create mediocrity throughout the society. And what happens? Society collapse. This is why socialism breeds poverty. This is why socialism has to resort to force. Because when the rich person decides he don't want to work anymore, he doesn't want to build companies, he doesn't want to maintain Amazon, you got to put a gun to his head and say, Jeff Bezos, if you want to continue living, you better keep working like you usually did before. That's extortion. look, I'm gonna keep hammering this point. Socialism is slavery. DEI is racism under new management. DEI put this idea that, oh, white people have some super special superpowers like Superman, and only they can do things that no one else can. Black people can't help themselves. That's a racist idea. You putting black people at the bottom. You putting black people as inferior. That's the framing of the secular religion of the progressive left. Marginalized groups are inferior to the majority group, and the majority group is up to the majority group to decide what's best for them. It's up to the government to decide what's best for its people, because the government has the superpower to make everyone wealthy, which is a lie. That's not possible because the government does not produce anything. But I digress.
See, Vito told Jinko the truth. I have no such power. But when the black community goes to the left and they ask them, can you feed me? Can you clothe me? Can you educate my children? Can you make me like you? Can you make me equal to you? They say, yes, we can do it if you just give us your soul. And for 50, 60 years, we've fallen for that lie. And we're at the bottom of every socioeconomic statistic in the United States of America. Look at where they rule. Everywhere they rule. Detroit, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Memphis, everywhere they rule. Murder, mayhem, death, destruction, worse schools. They control every whorehouse, every crack house, every failing school.
Wow, that's true.
Haven't you done enough to my people? Haven't you killed enough of them? Haven't you put enough of them in prison, destroyed enough of their families? I hold you in utter contempt.
That's true. Because the left and I'm about to wrap up the video right now. The left doesn't focus on problems that's actually attributable to actually solve problems. Because like I said, government intervention does not suffer any consequence for being wrong. That's why Ronald Reagan said it best. If the government says, I'm here to help, that's the worst thing the government can say. Because when the government gets involved, they suffer no consequences when they get it wrong. When the government comes in and say, hey, we're going to defund the police, and then crime increase, they don't get no penalty for being wrong for that. The private citizens have a better understanding of the situation that's at hand than the government do, who far off in some capital in D.C. This is why the government overestimates itself, but that's the point of government. Government only interest is, hey, I want to expand my power. And if I have to lie to the people and say, hey, I can cure cancer, vote for me, government will do that. Because all they're looking for is rationalization for you to give up more control and more power to them. And that's essentially what I see DEI as. If I have to encapsulate what is the religion of the progressive left, it's literally power. Machiavellianism. Lie, cheat, steal, do anything you need to do to give us more power. And then we make our little half-assed attempt at fixing the problem. Even though the problem becomes worse, we still want more power. Oh, look, the black community would have been even poorer if we didn't step in. You don't know that. That's a rationalization on your part. You started war on poverty to end poverty in America. How is that going, government? Oh, we got more people in poverty tied to us, essentially bribing people with government programs to continue voting for government power. Essentially, government just did what? Government became the big house, and everyone on welfare became a slave. You better vote for me. If you don't vote for me, the Republicans are gonna take your welfare away. That's why I'm in the agreement that if you're taking entitlement programs, you should lose your right to vote as a trade for the government taking care of you. Because that's a conflict of interest. This is why I think the left benefits off of misery. It doesn't benefit off of success and prosperity. It benefits off of poverty and misery. Because those are the pathways to the left. Resentment, grievance, hate, envy. This is that's why they focus on equal outcome so much and not equal opportunity, because they don't want nothing to be their fault. The hardest thing for a human to admit is that it's their fault. The hardest thing to admit for a group of people for why they get negative outcomes is to blame the actions and decisions of the people inside that group. It's so much easier to say, oh, it's not the previous generation fault that you inherited a bad culture that incentivized bad behaviors for your youth. It's the system. This is why the black people hold so heavy to racism, to explain away all their problems, because they don't want to look at the people in the mirror. That's just my thoughts, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I really interested to hear what you guys have to say. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in and watching. I didn't get much of an audience today, but hey, that's all fine. That's all good. I hope you guys on the replay, if you're watching this, let me know which one was your favorite segment. I'd like to hear your thoughts about the secular religion of the left, and let me know if there's anything that I missed out on. As usual, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for you guys for watching. Thanks for you guys for your attention. And I'll catch you guys next week on the next one. Bye. Happy weekend. Peace.